Welcome to Season 3 of the Weekly Fellowship Podcast. I'm Coach Audye.
And I'm Coach Regan.
We're here with you weekly to anchor and empower women to break cycles,
build resilience,
and rediscover self-worth
through practical insights,
faith-based encouragement,
and a supportive community. Welcome back, friends. We're here for another week of the Weekly Fellowship with me and Audye. Audye, how are you this week?
I am still pregnant, Regan. I think we left off last episode with maybe there will be a baby in my arms, and there is not. There is a baby in my stomach still, and that's okay.
A very low location in your stomach. Lower and lower and lower.
Yeah, lower for sure.
So you're 40 weeks plus.
I'm 40 weeks plus 40 in 2 days, 3 days, something like
It's
that.
all running together now. Awesome.
It's all running together.
Yeah, that surrender stage is, I literally just lived it, so I can empathize. That surrender stage is so beautiful and imperfect, and you go from like trying to control it to saying, no, Lord, it's all yours, and it's just such a dance, but we're here with you. We're here with you.
Thank you. How are you?
I'm joyful and my brain is happy and I'm happy to be here, but I'm also still recovering from a lovely upper respiratory situation. So I'm going to focus on enunciating for you today, but I apologize if I get a little nasally.
Oh, you're fine. You're absolutely fine. The viewers will see, those watching on YouTube will see that my video looks a little bit different. And I'm like, if we want, we can just roll right into Humble Pie highlights.
Yeah.
My video camera, there's something wrong with it. It's technology. Technology's not going for me. And that's fine. That's fine. It is what it is. My phone is no longer connecting to my computer, and it's not connecting to my computer because there's like an app interface issue that I figured out yesterday. It's this whole mess. Long story short, I'm using another camera. And then I'm making some changes to my website and my email campaigns and stuff. So if you're on my email list, you haven't really gotten that many emails from me recently, and there's a reason for that. I'm doing a full overhaul. I'm really excited to do that during the down period with the baby, because I just feel like I'm going to be able to sit here and like things that I don't normally have time or energy for, I guess, if that makes any sense, where I can just go in the back end and I've turned off everything on the front end. So I'm excited about that. However, I bit off more than I can chew. I have to learn I have to learn some like little bits of code and stuff like that. And Regan, I'm like, if any of our listeners know of how to code, shoot me an Instagram DM, I beg you. I'm a little bit lost. But it's a time to skill up. And so, those are my humble pies today. They're technology based. They are, I guess it's funny, but it's also like I'm feeling kind of sad about it right now, to be completely honest. Maybe we can swap that today.
Depressing one. Honestly, though, I do want to build you up because in my circle, I'm pretty tech savvy. And then when I hang out with you, I'm like the least tech savvy person in the world. You're very, very good. And so if you're struggling, it must actually be hard. And I'm sorry. And if it's frustrating you too, because you actually like this kind of stuff, where I cringe, but you like love this stuff. Yeah. So like most people are not going to relate to, oh, I'm just going to like do all of this minutia type work during my postpartum time. Like, what?
I'm so weird and I'm owning it. It's fine. Everybody keeps looking at me like, what are you talking about? And I'm just like, well, I haven't had time to just sit and I would love to do that. It's like choosing to like, and another thing is I'm going to read some more is what I'd like to do, like while breastfeeding or like at night. Like I literally got a little lamp, like a little, a book light for that. And I'm over here like, yeah, I'd like to read more, and I'd like to just take this time to like, and everybody's looking at me like, okay. And I'm just like, I mean, it could not work. Like, it could be some, like,
yeah, but that's how you're envisioning
I don't know. It could not work, but exactly. I'm like, that's my design for it. That's what I'd like to happen.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm
Currently,
weird.
I'm
Sorry about that.
breastfeeding with two hands, and I could use like three more hands actually to help me breastfeed right now. So
Oh,
the idea of reading while breastfeeding is hilarious, but we don't have the same boobs, so maybe you won't have that problem.
oh my goodness.
Yeah, like I literally every single time I have a child, I'm like, oh, I'm no longer reading, I am doing audibles. So, but I'm happy that that's your
Yeah,
vision, and I hope that that can come true for you. And it's not like this is your
thank
first
you.
kid, so hopefully that really will happen.
Yeah, I hope so. I
Yeah,
really do.
yeah. My humble pie
What about
is
yours?
just silly. It's I've been sick, I've been sneezing and coughing, and like my kids have too, and so we have Kleenex boxes like all over the living room because
Yeah,
one's not enough for the four of us in there, you know. And so like while I'm nursing my baby, and that's normally like when she goes to sleep, and then I go put her down, and then I get a little break to actually take care of myself or to do some work. I am sneezing so hard and so loud that she is jarring awake, like ding, 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 and she's looking at me like, "What was that?" Wide
oh my
awake,
goodness.
terrified, and pretty mad at me, like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Sorry, sorry, that bless me, like, my bad, go back to sleep." And then it's like, achoo, 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 like these, like, raw,
Oh,
oh, I can't, it's, I just had to just like give it up and be like, this is hilarious. But has she napped in
yeah.
48 hours? No, she is not. Because
Oh,
that's me. That's me. But it's comical. You
oh,
kind of have to see it. Like, I almost wanted to video that so you could see, like, how, like, her arms and legs, like, stick up in the air. Ah! But
yeah.
it is what it is.
It's the full startle reflex, and it's because mom's sneezing.
Yeah.
It's not because the door slammed. It's not because like kids are screaming. It's like mom sneezing. I'm just like full startle. Oh my
Yep.
gosh, I love it.
And you know how it is when you're like trying to
Oh,
get them down. You're like, okay, 3, 2, 1, we're finally, and then I'm like, ah, and I just wake her up.
yeah.
It's great. It's
Oh,
lovely.
you poor thing. I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's good. It's just
That
humble.
stinks.
Just humility.
It is humble. And I will say that one was a lot more entertaining than yours
Thanks.
normally are.
Thanks.
Really, I'm like, I appreciate you pulling up the slack for me today because mine, that stinks.
I actually
I'm
had a
like, I'm feeling
song.
stinky.
I had a song to it the other day because I was so bad that I was like, this would actually
Really?
go well to a song. And I cannot remember what it was. Dang it. If I think about it, I'll tell you next time because that was really funny. I was
Yeah.
like, I don't have the capacity to video this and put it to a song. But if I did, it would go to this one. You know?
I love it. Oh my gosh. Oh, that's so funny.
Okay, so you ready to dive into this conversation?
I maybe I am, maybe I'm not. I don't know. Am I?
I am. I love this conversation. This is a good one.
Yeah.
Today we're going to talk about overthinking,
Yeah.
oversharing, ruminating thoughts after a social event or after a conflict or a hard conversation. Sometimes after an easy
Yeah.
conversation, I have ruminating thoughts. So,
That's so true. It's so true. I'm sorry. I'm like, I don't want to laugh and like cut you off immediately, but that is so true. How many times do we have the simplest conversation? And like, we could even like, I don't know, we leave the grocery store and they're like, thanks, have a good day. And you're like, you too. And like, that's the proper reaction, right? But instead, we're thinking like, did they say that? Did they say have a good day? Or did they say something different or like enjoy your meal or like whatever it was,
That
right?
actually that actually happened to me the other day in Target.
No
I was using
way.
a gift
Yeah.
card. Did I tell you this already? I was using a gift card.
No.
And I'm like over there using my fingernails to like scratch off the thing and try to use it on the like self pay area, self checkout.
Hmm.
And this lady comes over to me who works for Target and she's like, she says something and I'm kind of in my own world and I didn't know she was talking to me and she like, honey, don't you know we have this? And she reaches up to the top of the self checkout and there's a penny. No, I didn't see the penny on the red self checkout thing. And she's like, don't you know we have this free? Yeah, you're wasting so much time here. And she's being nice, but I overthought that conversation the whole way home. Like, was she watching me just hunched over scratching? Like, was I like looking? Like, what made? I don't know. I thought about it forever.
Oh, that's so funny, but that's so relatable. And I'm like, yeah, that's like the first, that first little one, you know? It's like that's the
Mm-hmm.
first, yeah. That's so relatable. It's where it
So,
starts.
yeah. So let's go into a bigger one. Let's go into a
Yeah.
funner, more fun.
A
Um,
funner?
So, ruminating thoughts in my world has been something that I thought is all humans like did all the time and that people just struggle with. You just stayed up late. The reason I did not realize this, but the reason I had an addiction to TV and media at night was because I was avoiding my thoughts and emotions that were coming up. And so I was just trying to numb
Mm,
them out really loudly. And once I realized like how to deal with the ruminating thoughts, then I wasn't so addicted to the TVs and phones
yeah.
and all that stuff because it's, kind of nice to just have the freedom to go to sleep in peace if you want to.
Yeah. Valid.
Yeah, right?
Valid.
So, like, let's see, about 12 years ago for me, I had my first really big one. And it was a conflict with my father in law, actually, which is kind of a big deal, you know? Like, if you think about
Yeah.
I was newly married and was a young mom. And this conflict was really wearing on me. And I remember standing at the sink washing dishes, and my mind was just going over and over and over these details. And I just want, and I would get really upset. I'd get like hot, I'd get like
Yeah.
angry, I'd get sad. And I was just like, I am ready for this to be done. I don't want to think about this conflict anymore. And so I asked friends for help. I prayed about it for help. Like, take these thoughts away, Lord. Take these thoughts away. Like, I give them to you. Um, and that doesn't work. It didn't work for me. I haven't seen that work for any of my clients or friends since in the last 12 years.
Yeah.
I even went to my priest and I like confessed that like I am constantly thinking about this situation and I'm constantly feeling angry in my heart. And I want this to
Hmm.
I don't want that to be my heart posture. I don't want to feel angry all the time. And I just couldn't figure out a way to make it better. And whenever I was diagnosed with cancer, I was willing to go to counseling. Sometimes it literally takes cancer to go to counseling. And that's when
Right?
I learned, yeah, that's when I learned she's just like, "Hey, when you suppress a thought like that, when you have a thought and you are trying to tell it no, go away, go away, go away." She's like, it's like picture all of your thoughts on a conveyor belt, like a bunch of candy, and they're all coming out
Hmm.
different shapes and sizes, and it's just like going through the conveyor belt, going through the conveyor belt, and there's nothing really special about any of them because there's just thousands. And then when you go, no, I'm not going to think of that one, it's kind of like you have this special like stamp that comes down and stamps one of the thoughts with this bright red paint and like an alarm system that goes off. And so now you notice it on the conveyor belt and it starts to be louder and bigger and more damaging than it was before. It was just like a little piece of candy among the rest. And she's like, that's how your brain works when you tell it, don't think that, just let it go, just let it go. So that was my first step into understanding that silencing my thoughts and emotions was actually not going to work. It actually made it worse.
Hmm. Yeah. I can empathize with that on the level of I feel like for me, my experiences with specifically with overthinking and like mine falls more into the category of oversharing in the sense of like, did I say too much or did I say the right thing? And I've had those experiences too where you sit there and you ruminate on one situation and you're thinking like, maybe I shouldn't have said that, or maybe that was too much, or maybe this, or maybe that. And for me, it turned into something that was like chronic with like everything. Like it was just constant. And that it came from like the root cause of that for me was like being second guessed constantly as a child and then like formative years it was just constant like, are you sure, are you sure, are you sure, are you sure, and that eventually developed in my head of like, I don't know, like I might be an adult but like I'm not capable of making decisions or even thinking for myself. Like I have to have this external validation from somebody else. And so I think it's interesting that your counselor used that conveyor belt analogy just because like that's very much what it felt like, but it was every single piece of candy for me, and maybe that stamp was a little bit smaller, if that makes any sense. But I think it's so interesting because like our brains are doing the exact same thing, but it's like, oh, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. And then like, boom, we have this thought for a second. And it's like, oh, wait, I'm not fine. What if I'm not fine? I shouldn't have said that. Oh, it's okay. This is now out of my mind. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Boom, another one. Um, and yeah, wow, I think that that's two great examples of the same thing, but different.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. I like to think about the oversharing piece from that direction. And then that's profound when you have been, you said second guessed as a child,
Hmm.
which, all parents are like, are you sure to their kid, like to their children?
Yeah.
Like, but then there's that level of, um, I don't think you know what you're saying that
Hmm.
we sometimes do with our children or some parents sometimes did to us that leads to that like lack of self-trust. Maybe I don't know. I don't think
Yeah.
I do know.
Yeah.
And that's,
Um,
yeah, that's rough.
it was just a lot of and I kind of like goes into the reason why I'm overthinking often, is I think now as an adult, when I met Eric, I was like 19, and for Eric, my husband, and so for like a couple of years there, I had thought. I was like, oh, I just have like these are just shared experiences. Like these are unique experiences that like everybody has. And I would say things to him, and this man would look at me like, um, what? I'm like, well, this is normal. Like, this happens to everybody. He's like, no, like, that is not something I've ever experienced in my life. And so I think it's interesting because when I finally found someone that I didn't feel afraid to overshare with, and I didn't think about overthinking with, because these weren't shared experiences, because it was something that was just like, say, just out of the blue. And I don't want to out myself here. I'm not gonna like I'm like I'm a weirdo. We know I'm a weirdo. We've just established that at the beginning of this episode. I'm not gonna add to that. Um, but shared experiences, like, yeah, like, weren't you constantly second guessed? Like, didn't your parents make all of these decisions for you? Like, weren't you told that, like, yeah, it was X, Y, and Z, this is the way it was, and you just didn't have, like, a say in, like, 80 or 85% of what went on when you were a kid? And when he looks at me, he's like, yeah, no, that's not it. It's, it, it's like a whole other level of overthinking. It's like I'm like I don't know how to explain it, but it's like we add on a conveyor belt, and now we've got two going at the same time. It's like, well,
Oh,
I thought this was safe, and this is safe, and technically it is safe, but this is not a shared experience. And so then we go back to like, okay, now I'm overthinking about the experience of like, okay, what does this mean about my childhood? And like, what does this mean about everything? And I just think it's interesting because I think oversharing and overthinking for me was definitely a crutch for a long time and something that I struggled with immensely. However, I think that it also brought a lot of awareness and light whenever I was able to we talk about taking the women's school masterclass and whatnot. Whenever I was able to start doing some of that formation work, it helped so much to be able to say like when that overthinking those thoughts would come up, it was like, oh, like I don't have to, like you said, suppress. I don't have to shut this down. Like let's approach this with curiosity.
mm, that's so beautiful. I really went with you there on the double conveyor belt. Because even though your husband's safe, you're getting new surprising information from him, feedback. And so it's like
Yeah.
sending your brain into overdrive. Okay, so this is like overthinking on steroids. Like this is a great example. It's like the highest because I thought, I said I could win the trophy in people pleasing, and I thought I could in this too. But I think you win. You win the
I
trophy
think I
today.
can win this one.
Most dysfunctional goes to Audie today. I took it home last week. You can take it home this week. That's good.
Thank you.
So let's go into like the other ways to what do we do about it? So when I first started getting help with this, like I said, the counselor gave me the information, which was really helpful. And then I started getting coached through. some specific situations with ruminating thoughts. One of them being my father-in-law's my conflict with my father-in-law. And this we used the top down approach with my coach. She was going, okay, I'm going to help you get from your brain to your heart. And so she asked me lots of good questions that helped me break it down into what were some underlying beliefs that I was holding that were keeping me stuck in this cycle of thinking about my father in law. And for
Yeah.
me, when I started to dig deeper, it was like the underlying thought was like, if I just explain enough to him, if I just do something right, if I could just control the situation more where he would understand my heart, then he would like me, he would love me. And
Yeah.
when I saw that, I decided, oh, I'm working for love. And even though that's gross sounding and weird, I also knew like immediately like, oh, that's not fruitful. That's not
Yeah.
fruitful. So for me, that was a big like bam, and I really got some freedom right in that moment of that's a lie that I'm believing and I don't actually believe it. And once I saw it, it was like the ruminating thoughts for me just cleared around that situation. So when you're
Yeah.
thinking about that with your oversharing,
Wow.
what's coming to
Yeah.
mind for
No,
you?
that totally, I honestly, way too many things are coming to mind, and I'm like, I can't share all of them. I'm like, let me compartmentalize.
Overshare.
I overshare. Um, I'm like, I have to compartmentalize a little bit. Okay, so that is just so many, there's so many good things that come from awareness. And so I just want to start with that because there's awareness that we have like this overthinking type tendency, but then there's this huge piece of awareness and healing of what is the truth and what is a lie. And so for me, in my particular case, like this childhood situation, it was not the truth was very blurry. The lies were very blurry. Everything was just blurry. It felt like there was a lot of confusion growing up. And that transferred into my relationship. I projected that onto my husband. I projected that onto myself. Um, to the point where I like almost like incapacitating overthinking, where it's like I am frozen. Like I cannot make any decisions because I'm going to make the wrong one. And I really think that for me, what that brought up is this deep rooted, um, like this need for truth. And then we have this idea of like, okay, so what is truth? And like, where does truth come from? And then learning about that in order to validate the fact that I can't make a decision or all the decisions I make are wrong. We know that that is a lie. We know that that is a limiting belief. But there's this extra step that we have to take to get to that point where we're able to hear that as a lie. I'm not sure if that's making sense.
I think so. Um, Getting to the root of your limiting belief in this situation is, I just want to like kind of repeat it back and break it open a little bit.
Yeah.
Getting to the root of yours is, um, I can't make a good decision. I can't make the right decision. And so if
Yeah.
you're using a top down approach to get to that root, then what do you do with that once you know it? I mean, that's the awareness piece. Like,
Yeah.
yay, we can stop chasing all these other issues. We can stop being like, I'm gonna set a goal not to turn the TV on tonight for 40 days or for whatever your goal is, because you know it's not about the TV now. It's about I
Hmm.
don't trust myself to make decisions.
Yeah.
But so that's the awareness, bam. But now what do we do from there?
Yeah. What I have done and what I continue to do because this and I think it's funny that this topic comes up like you're like people pleasing is my thing and I'm like overthinking is fully my thing. I was like I am still overthinking. I constantly try not to overthink. Um but like a situation in which like you had recently set a bunch of boundaries and you were just like revamping everything because like lack of boundaries is exhausting. And then we dive into people pleasing, and I'm like, y'all go listen to that episode. But when that changes, when I see like something externally change, I'm like, I know what Reagan's doing. Like, I know that she's overwhelmed and she's like saying, I'm not going to do like X, Y, or Z at this point. And we're in different time zones. We have different like family schedules. And so there's often times where I'll send you a message or an email or something like that. And then you don't get to me until the next day, which is completely like, that's fine, totally normal. But in my head, if I've had access to you and then all of a sudden it stops, I'm like, what did I say? Like, what did I do? And so, what I did practically in that scenario was I just went back to like, sometimes I go back and reread, and I'm like, okay, this isn't crazy. This is not crazy. This communication is not crazy. And another thing is after I am able to, like, again, we do the top down approach. So we have it in here. I'm like, okay, I know that this is not crazy. So how is this going to affect my heart? Um, what I'll do is I will take a deep breath and like I will script it out and say it over and over and over. And that's something I think that's been the most helpful for me with the overthinking because it's so intellectualized and it's something that it's very wordy in my head because it's overthinking. And so I try to not overword it, but to match the words, if that makes any sense. So it's like Reagan is not mad at me. Reagan is not mad at me. Reagan is not mad at me. Reagan has no reason to be mad at me. And just kind of like work through it sounds silly, but it's like a little litany.
Oh,
And
that's
this is
good.
literally what I do. It's a little litany of like, Reagan's not mad at me. There's no reason for her to be mad at me. I didn't say anything weird. If I did say something weird, I'm weird. That's okay. And just kind of like going through this litany of validation. And there's something that happens where I will literally, I just when I'm done, like it's like this feeling of just this weight lifted off of me. And it doesn't mean that it won't come back, but it does mean in that moment I'm like, hey, like I've solved that. We've moved from here to here, and it's gonna be okay. Um, and so that's literally something I should probably write up a template or something like that for that, like the litany of overthinking, because it's been so incredibly helpful to move it from like my head, and it's like we just watch it move down and move down and move down, and then finally we're here.
Mm. It also kind of sounds like it's moving from your like hind brain to your prefrontal cortex. It's almost like you're in that emotional response of like, I'm going to be
Yeah.
abandoned or whatever your underlying fear is. Like she's
Yeah.
going to cut me off or she's going to talk bad about me to people or like whatever that
Oh
we all have
yeah.
our own underlying fear. And so that emotional response is like alert, alert, alert. And then as you give it truth, okay, I'm giving you more truth. I'm giving you more truth. I'm shining a light in the darkness. I'm shining a light on all those little lies. And as it becomes more and more illuminated, it's like, oh, I'm back to my prefrontal cortex and I'm going to
Yeah.
go take action now in my day.
Here we are.
That's so beautiful. So I don't use that at all. So I love that you shared that because I would that
Good.
wouldn't that is kind of what I learned from my coach originally was that identifying the lie and speaking truth to it and replacing the lie with truth. Absolutely. But I don't do it in a wordy way and I never match that word for word. That's really cool. The way that I have learned more recently, like 3 years ago, I don't remember when I learned the switch from you can not only go from your head to your heart, but you can go from your heart first up to your head. And that honestly
Yeah.
is my quicker go-to now because I am a
Okay.
big I'm high, very sensitive person. I'm a big emotional person. I'm one of those kids that like cried constantly as a kid and like if my parents ever looked at me like aggressively, I would cry. Like that was just like, I'm sorry, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Like I was not trying to act up ever, ever, ever. And so for me, I've learned that that's actually a superpower, not a weakness. And so I just
Yeah.
use my emotions to get the result that I'm looking for. So in this case, like if we're talking about my father-in-law, if I would have had this skill back then when I'm at that kitchen sink and I'm like ruminating and I'm feeling so upset and I'm getting hot and then bothered and all these different things, I would just go straight now. If I knew this back then, I would go just put the dish down for a second, pause for like 90 seconds and go, where am I feeling this in my body?
Yeah.
And when I feel it, like in that case, I don't know because I haven't done that work, but with that specific example, but like recently I was ruminating, I had a ruminating thought while I was lying down in bed and I couldn't go to sleep. I hadn't had that happen in a long time. And so I was just like, "Oh, you're doing it. You're overthinking. Pause. Where are you feeling this in your body?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, my face is burning. My face. What in the world? I didn't even notice my face is burning." And so then I was like, "Just feel it. Feel my face burning. Just feel it. Like just literally sit there and almost make it more intense." And as it
Yeah.
intensifies for me, the clarity comes. Like on the other side of 90 seconds, oh, clarity comes and I realize like, oh, I feel embarrassed. Like in that moment, I was lying
Yeah.
there in bed and I feel embarrassed. And so I was able to see clearly about the situation I was thinking of. I felt embarrassed. It's like not a big
Yeah.
deal. And so, guess what, Reagan? You don't die when you feel embarrassed. And now you've already felt it and it's over. And then the ruminating thoughts just stop. And that works for me. I if the top down approach doesn't work, that works for all the other ones. Just into the body,
Yeah.
into the body, into the body works so well for me.
That's awesome. And I think that that's super helpful. And I think that it's really interesting as well because we're both very similar, but we also have very different ways of processing things. And so I think it's funny to like I will incorporate some of that body work sometimes, and it's good for me to gain awareness of like, okay, specifically I'm like I'm in this one space and I know that I'm feeling this in this part of my body and it's like I know that I'm going to sit here and I'm going to feel it, etc. But I'm so in my intellectual mind where I'm over here just like we said doing this whole like ruminating litany of whoever knows what. And I just think it's interesting because it's like it's the same, it's very similar, it's backwards.
You get to the
Um
same place, you get to the lie.
yeah, you get to the lie exactly. Absolutely.
It's kind of cool too.
It
Oh,
makes
go
me.
ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, don't forget what you're gonna say because you're pregnant, and I know that it can
Yeah,
happen
thank
sometimes.
you. Oh no. Oh no.
Is it
Did
gone?
I? No. Oh my gosh.
Is it already gone? That was so fast.
Did it? No, you
Like,
said don't forget, so I had to forget it.
oh
Go
my gosh.
ahead. Oh my
Well,
gosh.
goodbye, thought. Goodbye. Taking it back, what we were talking about right before. You made me think about my husband too. Like my husband, I've coached him or just taught him how to do the emotional work. He's gone
Mhm.
through the wholeness school, and so he knows how to do the mindset work. And so I've just taught him the emotional side. And what he does is goes on a walk, and he does the litany. That's what how he does it. I'm like, well, when he describes to me like what he did and how it worked and how much better he feels, I'm like,
Yeah.
that's not how I do it. That's so fast. But I always tell you, Audie, your brain is a lot like my husband's. So that makes so much sense because he like finds the truth and then he starts verbalizing, 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 and then he's good.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I love that verbalization. It didn't come back to me, the thought.
Dang
So
it.
but I'm just like, I know, I was thinking. But it didn't work. Which is funny for my verbalization brain. Let me just compliment.
Well, and I did say
Oh
don't
my gosh.
forget, and it's when you say don't forget, it's like saying forget. Just forget it. Just forget it.
Oh my gosh. Um, Something I'm thinking of is like I kind of wanted to like take it back to why we overthink and why we overshare,
Mm,
and because we had touched on it just a little bit about basically like buying love, right? And how icky
mm-hmm.
that sounds and how icky that feels. And I think it's interesting because you once told me, Audie, who has the keys to your heart? And that is something that has stuck out to me. And I just coached a few people through it, using the same verbiage and the same language because it was so impactful for me and something that has stuck with me for I don't know, it's been a year and a half maybe since you told me that. It's been a long time. But something I was thinking about is we're often like we're trying to buy our love, we're trying to buy our worth by oversharing or over explaining, and then we have the consequences of think overthinking after we do that. And I think it's interesting because I don't, we shouldn't feel obligated to share the keys of our hearts with someone, but most of the time I've found myself overthinking after telling someone something is because I felt obligated to share the keys of my heart with that person. And maybe for whatever reason they don't deserve that. Um, and I don't know if that's like taps onto that situation or like you have another situation that kind of brings up, but for me, literally 90% of the time because I'm trying to buy it. And even with myself, I'm like, I'm trying to share the keys to my own heart with myself. And if it's forced and I feel like I don't deserve it, then it doesn't come across right.
Yeah, so the keys to your heart being that inner castle, that interior castle that really isn't for everyone. You know, we have the outer circle of friendship, we have our inner circle, we have our like really tight knit, like close loved ones that we really get to go like hear the highest highs and the lowest lows, and I need you to be with me. And not everybody
Yeah.
gets access to that. And sometimes we were forced or we didn't realize and we gave too many people or we gave the wrong people access. And we kind of have to revoke those keys to feel safe again. And so I just wanted to like break that open for our listeners a little bit on what we're referring to with
Yeah.
the keys to our heart. Um, and so to yeah, whenever you've shared something that's in your interior heart with someone who really doesn't need that information, and you don't you're not obligated to give it to anyone, that does feel gross. It's like it feels unsafe. And so you're like,
Yeah.
wow. I mean, I thought about that. We recently had our baby baptized, and I really, really, really wanted to send some pictures to some specific people in my life because I wanted them to be excited with me and love my baby the way I love my baby and like love our family the way I love our family and the way I love their family. And I've learned like these certain individuals um, don't deserve the keys to my heart because when I give it, they don't respond. When I give it, they're like thumbs up. When I give it, like not interested. And I had to come to terms with that and kind of grieve those friendships and grieve those relationships and then go, okay, I'm not going to overshare with those people anymore and I'm not going to give that personal information out to those people. One, because they don't want it, but two, because it hurts every time I do that and come up without the love that I'm desiring. And so I'm just going to stop like getting my heart broken by the same people over and over, and I'm going to choose someone more worthy and who really
Yeah.
wants to be in this relationship and in this season of life. Does that
Absolutely.
oh, expand on that a little
That
bit more?
tracks. It tracks so well. And I'm like, thank you for following up with me. It's pregnancy brain. I'm like, everybody knows what I'm talking about.
No, you're good.
Um, but no, I completely am tracking with you because that's exactly like for me, I would force myself to do that because I was like, if I over explain, then there's no way they'll misunderstand me and they have to love me. And this is like the guaranteed, like, okay, like check mark, like I'll just share every single thing about myself and we'll just be on the same page and it'll be fine. But what that ended up doing, like you said, like we go back to that hurt. And that hurt is number one, at that point, when we have that awareness, it's self-inflicted. And that hurts on top of it. And then we're thinking, okay, why do I like for me, I say we, for me, for the overthinkers, why am I doing this? Why would I do that to myself? Why did I do that? It's because you're a failure. You're always and we just like again, we go into the opposite of the litany, the litany of bad rather than the litany of good. Um, and we cause ourselves to continue to overthink. And just like you had said, like the conveyor belt situation, it's like what we've, or the even just don't forget. What we focus on expands. You're going to tell me not to forget. I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah,
Forget what?
totally. I just gave us a great example
Um,
of what not to
you
do.
just gave a great example. And so then it's like, okay, well, if I did it this once, this is going to be this pattern. And then it's just something that is continued and continued and continued. And it's never beneficial. And so I remember I remember literally envisioning Reagan, as you said, because you had told me, you were like, who has the keys to your heart? I remember literally sitting here, eyes closed, envisioning myself with all of the, like, taking back keys, like physically
Mm-hmm.
taking back keys from people and holding them. And then I remember holding all the keys and thinking like, I don't want these keys. Like, I don't want this responsibility. I don't want this responsibility, but I'm the only one that's supposed to have this responsibility. Like, I'm supposed to dish a key out to God. I'm supposed to dish out a key to my husband. I'm supposed to dish out a key to my kids. And taking on that responsibility of who am I going to share with what, and being very intentional about it. Like, I talked on this podcast like two episodes ago that I had to pee in the shower at 3 a.m. Like and normally that would have been something where I'm like, wow, Audie, you're an idiot. You just told the whole world this entire thing. How embarrassing. What are they gonna think of you? And the only difference is I didn't give our listeners and our audience like a key to my heart. Like, because
Yes.
it's not that deep.
Yes,
It's
and
not that deep.
frankly, that would be unhealthy. That would be very
Yeah,
dysfunctional if we were in
so
here
dysfunctional.
giving like this whole entire audience like our interior castle. Like we that's just
Hmm.
that's no that's not that would be like you know, there are people who know where you live, like the state that you live in, and there are people who know like the city you live in. Then you have some people who are like, I have your address in an address book. And then you have those
Yeah,
friends that like, I know how to drive to her house without even looking it up. And then you have those pocket of people who like, they're comfortable using your own master bathroom. Like they come in with barely knocking. They, you know, like and we have different levels of what we share with all those different people. And it's dysfunctional for me to share my master bathroom with someone who doesn't even know if I live in Texas or in Utah. Like it's
yeah,
dysfunctional to treat them all the same. And this is where this is so beautiful. But when I'm getting chills right now just thinking about this because I'm finishing up a year of my high tide coaching program and I got to work with these women today. Next week is our last session. So I'm just watching them. And they used to be women who would overthink, overworry, overspeak, and like, you know, that woman who's very kind, has a good heart, but she's um, like using a lot of words and really defending herself and her actions. You know, and she's kind of like this. And now these women, it's so cool to watch. Like they are classy. And not because we were trying to be classy. That was never the goal. But they're so classy because they share what needs to be shared and they don't need to share any excess because they are not trying to prove their worth to anyone. They are not working for love or working to be liked, working to be approved of. They are just looking at how can I contribute to the world, being my authentic self, who God made me to be, and nothing more. And then they close their mouths. And
yeah,
I'm sorry, but that is like they just look so classy. Like I don't know how else to describe it. It's just when you think about your role models and mentors and people who you look up to in the world, are they the people who overtalk and I'm really sorry and I'm defending my action, or are they those really self-confident, self-assured, peaceful interior castle people who you know have depth and who listen and ask you good questions? Well,
yeah,
that's what my clients have become, and it was just so cool to watch that today. Like, oh, it was so good.
yeah. And that's, I feel like, a testament to coaching in itself, and not just coaching, but also like just being in a group of women, just like the rising tide. I'm like, shameless rising tide plug. This is literally what we're doing.
Yeah,
Literally, we are taking steps together because we become the sum of the five people that we are around the most. And it is so incredibly true that when you're able to model that, or to see someone that models that, it's so much easier to attain. And then you have a coach who, especially a coach like you, Reagan, who is just so gentle and tender, but also at the same time very like, you're firm. You're like, I'm not about to beat around the bush. And you're able to just like walk with these women. And it is so important to be able to. do that. And I think that we often, like, what I did for so long was I would just sit in the overthinking. And even though there was logic and I could start the litany, I didn't realize that's what I was doing at the time. I could start the litany, but I couldn't get it into my heart. And part of that is because I needed, and I still do sometimes, need that external validation that no, like the truth, like this blurred line that was this thought, this fiction of this image of like of my imagination, like is actually a real thing. And here's this line. And you're able to like this is okay. Like this line, it exists for a reason. And you can totally come back to that. Um, and so I think that it is so good to have more people walking with you because if you don't have that, that truth could stay blurred forever. And you could say, "Oh, I'm working on it." And like just like you said at the beginning, like I'm gonna pray about it, ask him to take it away, I'm gonna do these other things. But just like you said, that alone doesn't work.
It
Faith
doesn't.
alone is it doesn't do it like it's not what we're called to do. We're called to do both. And it can feel like scary and unwelcoming and uncomfortable and like shameful even to to come here and like wow, like Coach Reagan, like I'm having a really hard time with this overthinking and I don't know what to do about it. It's this one thought and it feels so stupid. And it's just not. Like there isn't shame toward it. It's like this is what we were put on this earth to do is to be with each other and to help each other. Um and to walk with each other. And I love that you're finishing that up. And I love that the timing of all of this has just been really good.
Right? It's oh yeah, and I want to add too about these groups that you and I work with, and it being in the Rising Tide Fellowship, this community. The we all often have community around our kids' events or around our church, but because it's not well, I don't know what everyone's cons are, but I know what the pros are in the Rising Tide Fellowship. And it is that it's not just a bunch of women saying, "Oh, you're doing your best. Give yourself more grace. Just go easy on yourself." That's not what it
Yeah,
is. And it's also not the like Jillian Michaels, like, is that her name? Jillian Michaels? The like
I think
hardcore.
so. The
Um,
fitness trainer?
yes, the fitness trainer, like, come on, pick it up, girls. Like, we need more goal achievement. Like, it's neither of
Yeah.
those. It's that vacillation between both, like, we're having firm, real, honest accountability, but we're with
Hmm.
high grace. High grace. So it's like high expectations and high grace. And we're like just growing together, and I don't think that I have found that in very many other groups. Even my closest friends, I've asked so all of them to go through this with me, and two of them have, and it's made us so much closer because we all have the skills and the language to work through conflicts and grow to closer together versus avoiding them or just cutting each other
Hmm.
so much slack that we're not even growing anymore, not growing toward Christ
Yeah.
anymore. So to me that's the biggest difference, is that there's community and then there's high level community, and I didn't know where to
Yeah.
find high level community until we created it.
Yeah. I think that's also something interesting because I definitely resonate with the women, the community of um not necessarily like yeah, it's like don't be so hard on yourself, but it's like kind of like the opposite end of it where it's just like everything's horrible all the time and this is so like but like this is what it is to be a mom and like I'm just gonna offer this up and like this is fine. And it's like oh um
Hopeless.
no, hopeless, and just completely like that I've definitely resonated with that aspect of it too, but another thing is there are some people out there that I have interacted with that it is like if you have you're not able to grow and evolve like the difference between like a growth and a fixed mindset. It's like I am stuck here and yeah, I can grow, but I can only grow in these ways because this is what they have told me or I've believed or whatever, and there's no other way to grow. And so I was very opposed to coaching for a little while because I was like, this is just, it sounds odd. Like, I don't quite know what this is all about. Like, this is not something I've ever experienced before. Um, but it's been so integral in all of my growth over the last few years. And I just thank God that I was finally open to that because that is very much a vehicle from Him to get me to where I want to go. But we either, like in my experience, like I said, it's like everything is awful, but it's just the way that it's supposed to be. Like, this is
Mm-hmm.
just the way things are. And that is just so not. I'm like, we've gone off on a tangent, but this is just so, it's just so not true.
Yeah, well, and we'll like solidify it here because you've hit on this twice, and I think some of our listeners are going to go, "Oh, red flag. Audie's not a good Christian," and I just want to like go ahead and just nip that in the bud. It's because you're saying it's not just faith. It's not just faith. You have to do more than have faith. You have to do more than pray, and basically, I really believed, and I thought this like all you need is Jesus. All you need is Jesus. And that sounds so lovely, but it is trash because when my child is struggling with math, do I tell him all you need is Jesus, son? All you need is Jesus. When my daughter has a rash, do I say all you need is Jesus? All you need is Jesus? No, no. Jesus gave us a brain and a world full of all these other things that we can do to grow and to heal and to become more like him and to love him more. And but for ourselves, we restrict that and we're like, no, no, no. You don't get to have other resources. No, baby, no. You just need Jesus. And if you need more than Jesus, then you just are lacking faith. And
Yep.
we would never ever do that to our kids. So please, like, let's cut it out and stop doing that to ourselves. Soapbox off. Rant over.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm like, you killed it. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of the Weekly Fellowship Podcast. If you'd like to work with Regan, you can learn more about her on her website at reganclementcoaching.com.
And if you'd like to work with Audye, you can find her at audiegonzalez.com. Season 3 is sponsored by the Rising Tide Fellowship, an online community for faith-filled women looking for growth. You can learn more about our mission at risingtidefellowship.com.
If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.